Alright, so it looks like Tony Hinchcliffe finally got cancelled, but not in the way he's always fantasized about. Instead of being taken down by the woke mob for dropping some edgy slur, he got cancelled by the WWE. Why? Because he couldn't sell enough tickets for his SummerSlam comedy event. This was a show entirely revolving around Tony's stand-up, and the turnout just wasn't there. That's a brutal wake-up call for someone who proudly carries around one of the biggest egos in the comedy world. Tony's acting like he's ready to perform in any body of water at this point. He keeps talking like this is the most important moment of his life, the big shot he's been waiting for. But just 3 months earlier, he already blew a high-profile opportunity by bombing at the roast of WrestleMania. That show was such a disaster that WWE removed all traces of it from the internet. Think about that. Jui, an organization that happily promotes chair shots and soap opera blood feuds, thought Tony's set was too cringeworthy to exist online. You know your jokes are bad when even WWE fans, people who think Bert Kreischer is peak comedy, agree you suck. This latest flop might just be the harshest hit to Tony's ego we've seen yet. Before this, the biggest blow to his self-image was probably when Donald Trump said he had no clue who Tony was. This was after Tony bombed during Trump's biggest rally of the year. Trump literally said, "I have no idea who he is," and added that he didn't want to know. He dismissed Tony completely, just another failed warm-up act making jokes about Puerto Rico. So that brings us to today's question. Is Tony Hinchcliffe in 2025 a real stand-up comedian? Or is he just a clever podcast host who drops the occasional one-liner? Because while Kill Tony is undeniably successful, maybe even outperforming Joe Rogan's show in some ways, it relies heavily on its format. With the live band, guest comedians, and rotating open micers, the show thrives. But what happens when all of that is stripped away? Is Tony funny when he's on his own? To answer that, let's look at a rare moment where Tony went solo. He recently appeared on the YouTube channel Country Club Adjacent. There, he tried to show off his legendary roasting skills. And what happened? Not much. He dropped lines like, "This looks like a manager and pitcher at a little league game," and "fart knocker." He even brought out classics like Bibbidi Bobbidi and Hibbity Hobbity. It didn't land. Eventually, the other guys on the show just started roasting Tony to his face. One said, "You have enough money to buy out Madison Square Garden but dress like a broke dude from Tallahassee." Another joked, "Do you purposely try to hide your Rolex, or do you just want us to think it's fake?" These weren't playful burns. They clearly struck a nerve. Tony wasn't laughing. Because if there's one thing Tony's deeply insecure about, it's being perceived as low class. He wants to be seen as upper tier, wealthy, exclusive, high status. So when they mocked his fashion, his watch, his vibe, it hurt. He tried clapping back. But again, none of it really stuck. It might seem like just dudes joking around, but Tony knew he was bombing. This is the guy who literally has "I roast" on his license plate. If roasting is your only trick, shouldn't you be better at it? At one point, he goes full cringe with lines like, "Come down to the Joe Rogan experience, you dirty little Jew boy." The only person laughing at those lines was Tony himself. That says it all. This wasn't the roast master doing his thing. This was a guy flailing to keep his bit alive. Now, to be fair, Tony has never claimed to be a master of improvisational roasting. His real talent lies in pre-written jokes. He got his start writing for Comedy Central roasts, like the ones for Justin Bieber and Rob Lowe. So when he's working off a script, he can be sharp. Take his set from the Tom Brady roast. It was funny, at least on first watch. But looking back, it feels like it only stood out because the non-comedians before him were so painfully unfunny. Compared to them, of course, Tony looked great. But how does he hold up against actual comics? To find out, let's look at the roast of Luis J. Gomez. That lineup included heavy hitters like Shane Gillis, Joe List, Big J. Okerson, and Robert Kelly. No amateurs. These were real comics. And Tony's jokes? They were fine, but not the knockout material you'd expect from someone who calls himself the king of roasts. You could tell Tony had done this for a while, but where he seems to mess up is in how badly he wants to get canceled. He leans into sensitive topics not to push boundaries creatively, but just to provoke. That's exactly what got him in trouble with the WWE and at that Trump rally. It's like Tony thinks being controversial equals being funny. He tries to serve as the edgy hero battling woke censorship, but in doing so, he's sacrificed actual comedy for cheap shock value. And don't get me wrong, when done right, edgy humor can be hilarious. Just look at Shane Gillis's ESPY's monologue this year. He tackled race, gender, and politics and crushed. The difference is that Shane still aims to be funny. Tony seems to just aim for offense. And here's where it gets really clear. During that same roast, Shane Gillis roasted Tony into dust without crossing any lines. No shock, no slurs, just well-crafted, hilarious digs. Tony looks like Matthew McConaughey's skeleton. He even joked about Tony thinking he's the Joker. Shane said Tony practiced the Joker laugh around friends. But the twist? His own friends made fun of him behind his back for it. That's brutal. It gets worse. Tony apparently had a Corvette with a license plate that said, "I roast." Everyone laughed at him, not with him. Then Shane goes in again, comparing Tony's family to the Godfather, but in the most humiliating way. It was devastating and hilarious, and what made it hit harder was that it didn't rely on anything cancelable. Shane was just funnier. That's what Tony's missing. He's trying to fight the woke mob when the real battle is just being good at comedy, and lately he's been losing that fight. His reliance on edginess has made his material lazy. He's not evolving, just repeating shock tactics that wore out years ago. It's not even about being offensive, it's about being predictable. If you've heard one Hinchcliffe roast, you've basically heard them all. Now the ironic thing is that Kill Tony is still massive. It's arguably one of the most important platforms for rising comedians. And yes, Tony plays a role in that success. He's quick, he's sharp in controlled settings, and he does know how to structure a show. But when the spotlight is on him, and only him, the cracks start to show. He's not bombing because he's misunderstood. He's bombing because he's stale. The "I'm too edgy for this crowd" excuse doesn't fly when WWE and Trump fans reject you. That's not woke. That's your material being weak. And this brings us full circle. Is Tony Hinchcliffe a stand-up comedian in 2025? Or is he just a podcaster who used to be funny? Because if Kill Tony is the only place where he shines, then maybe that's all he is now. A host, not a headliner. Not a comic who can carry a set. Just a guy with a mic and a few pre-written burns. And that's fine. But it's not the legend he's trying to be. Thanks for watching, guys.